All right, it is Sunday night, and we're coming at you with another episode of the Cole Memo. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope you're all doing well. In this live stream, I'll cover a recent call from Illinois cannabis business owners urging relief from the steep fees and burdensome regulations in the Illinois cannabis industry. I'll also share the latest on a bill that could end police searches based solely on the smell of cannabis, which is also currently grounds for a Class A misdemeanor. A lot of people focus on the fact that police can search your vehicle. Not only that, they can just charge you with a Class A misdemeanor, which I've been told by legal experts is what you can get charged with if you assault your spouse, which doesn't seem right. We'll also be looking at what Trump's new DEA pick had to say about marijuana rescheduling and what it could mean for federal reform going forward. But first, we're going to look at a news report about people buying cannabis in Michigan and bringing it back to Tennessee. Before we do that, though, we are live on YouTube. If you comment below, you can have your comment displayed on screen, like our friend Genetic Memory Farms. I'm displaying their screen right now, that their comment on the screen right now. They say, "Woot, woot, woot, indeed, my friend. Thank you for tuning in." And if you are tuning in, thank you for tuning in. If you're catching this later and you're wondering how to tune in live, I'd say the best way is to head on over to colememo.com/YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you never miss a stream. The podcast is also available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and other podcasting platforms. I'll be right back after this message.
Here in the Midwest, growing amazing food isn't just a hobby, it's who we are. And that's why we created Envy Plant Foods. Whether you're working on a farm or starting a backyard garden, growing hot peppers for sandwiches, or cool lettuce for a chopped salad, Envy has the perfect plant food for you. Blended in Illinois since 1962. Support the Cole Memo and save. Get 10% off fertilizer for your wheat garden at envyplantfoods.com with code CHILL10. Plus, an additional 10% of your order will go to the Cole Memo to help fund the show. Again, that's envyplantfoods.com.
Thank you to the folks at envyplantfoods.com. Another way to support the show is by purchasing drinks from Cantrip. I would say supporting the show, supporting me. I love these drinks. They are federally legal cannabis products. You can get delivered right to your door. This one is a 50 milligram drink, which is awesome, but you can also get lower dose drinks if that's your, whatever floats your boat. They've got dosages of for everybody. Let's just say that. They've got drinks for everybody. They've got colas. They've got those orange sodas. They've got root beers. They've got seltzers. And like I said, you can get them directly delivered to your door, absolutely legally. And if you go to drinkcantrip.com/Cole Memo, you get 15% off of your order, and 15% goes to me to fuel my addiction to these drinks, my healthy addiction to these drinks. I love them. They're awesome. It's cool to be able to get lifted right next to your grandma who may not appreciate secondhand smoke. As a reminder, one of the best ways to support the show is by going to colememo.com/Patreon. It's just $3 a month to become a member. Members get access to episodes and content before they release to the public. Members also get notified when we go live. So for example, tonight I sent out a little notification to my patrons. And once again, that's colememo.com/Patreon. And I always just like to give this quick heads up. If you're on an Apple device, I recommend signing up from a computer or a non-Apple device because Apple adds extra fees on top of the very fair price of $3 a month, which isn't ideal. But Apple just wants their cut. So everybody drop a boo in the comments for Apple. I just wanted to say that, though, if you want to avoid those extra fees. All of my content ultimately always releases for free on public feeds. But if you'd like to support the show financially and get early access to the episodes before they release to the public, consider becoming a member at colememo.com/Patreon because it does cost a lot to do this show between licensing fees, the cost of travel, the cost of equipment, and more. And this show is brought to you by listeners like you. If Patreon's not your thing, you can make a one-time monthly or yearly contribution at colememo.com/support. And if you can't support the show financially, That is totally fine. One of the best ways is to one of the best ways to support this show is to smash that like button, as the kids say. So hit the like button if you're tuned in right now. Share the show with your friends, subscribe, or leave a positive review from wherever you listen to podcasts from. So if you go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and drop a 5-star review, that is always appreciated. Like I said, today we'll be covering a recent call from Illinois cannabis business owners urging for relief from the steep fees. I'm also going to talk about the latest on a bill that could end police searches based solely on the smell of cannabis. We'll look at what Trump's new DEA pick had to say about the marijuana rescheduling process and what it could mean for federal reform. But let's start off the show by watching this news report about people purchasing cannabis from Michigan. Pure Michigan. Let's do it.
Drug agents intercept a shipment of marijuana and THC destined for Nashville streets.
This is Andy Cordan with the story you're seeing first here on 2.
This goes down Saturday night on I-65 South, right around Millersville. Officers with the 18th Judicial Drug Task Force stop a vehicle that was heading from Michigan back to Nashville, and it's loaded with marijuana. When asked where they're coming from, the suspects in the Jeep are somewhat vague.
Just coming through? Okay, where's just coming through at? Coming from Indiana? There we go. Oh, got you. What y'all going on out there? Just riding around? Okay. So y'all just drove up to Indiana just to drive around because it's nice day?
When officers search the trunk, they find all this. You're looking at 22 pounds of marijuana. Some of it's packaged in 1-pound bricks. And then there are dozens of other packets of THC products that include vapes and even pre-rolled joints that are ready for sale.
If we don't get this product off the street, ultimately it ends up in the hands of high schoolers as well as, older adults.
Agents tell News 2, members of the group admit to driving to Michigan, where pot is legal. Once there, they reportedly purchased what you see here at multiple dispensaries. Agents say the intention was to sell all of this in Nashville, where the suspects could double or even triple their profits.
There was receipts on each bag with an individual's name on it that shows they specifically purchased this amount and this is what they paid for it. All 4 of the individuals admitted to purchasing those products while in Michigan. They all admitted to using the products. They're all aware of the amount of product that they're bringing back into Tennessee, where they very well know it's illegal.
All 4 suspects in that vehicle went to the Sumner County Jail charged with felony marijuana charges.
Okay, so I just have to say it's very interesting to me that the police said that these were bagged for sale. Well, of course they're bagged for sale. They bought them from a dispensary, which is where they were for sale at. And when they say, and I don't know, maybe one of these or all of these people admitted that they were bringing this back for like resale in Tennessee, but that seems like they're assuming their intent, because personally, I've seen a lot of people go to Michigan and buy these exact products that are pictured, and they don't sell them, they consume them. Just like the news report noted, by the way. The news report said these people consume cannabis. And if you're going to drive from Tennessee to Michigan, where cannabis is pretty cheap, you're probably going to buy more than what you need. It's like when you go to Sam's Club, not to give Sam's Club free advertising, Costco, or any other big box store. Sometimes you buy more than you need because why not? You're going to go through it. Why not? I'm curious what you all think about this. Like, again, maybe they did admit that they were going to sell these products, resell these products. But for me, this isn't like a crazy image to see. This is a pretty mild haul when you consider that this is 4 different people purchased these products. Like, that's not crazy excessive in my opinion. I know it fills up a desk, but it's like, yeah, And then when they showed these products here and they're like, oh, it's a pound sold in a brick. The dispensary sold it that way. In fact, I've seen dispensaries on my way to Michigan advertising in Indiana saying, come here, you can buy as much as you want. So I don't know. This story isn't that crazy to me. Now, did these people do something wrong? Morally, you might say no. Legally, you could say yes, because you're not supposed to purchase cannabis from a legal state and take it out of state, even if you're going to another legal state. Um, they weren't. They were going to Tennessee, but my thing is, this story is just like, I don't know. I feel like they're really blowing it out of proportion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we didn't see clips here where the people say, "Yes, we were purchasing this massive amount of cannabis because we're going back and we're selling it." I'm curious what you all think. We are live right now, so if you comment below, we can display your comment. I don't know. I saw we had some comments come in about the Illinois story that we'll cover here in a bit. Somebody said, "Bro, don't admit shit and get a lawyer." Exactly. I mean, you shouldn't. I agree. But I'm just wondering, like, maybe because this is a short news clip and they seemed pretty sure of what they were saying, maybe we missed something here. But to me, again, with as sure as they said, these people were purchased this for sale. These products were packaged for sale. Again, of course they were packaged for sale. That's how dispensaries package them, because that's what dispensaries do. They sell these products. To turn around and say that these people bought this large of amount because they were going to go home and sell it at home, unless somebody admitted that, I don't know how they would know that. I don't know. Maybe we're missing something, but again, I'm curious what you all think before we segue to our next subject. Dave commented and said, "Hello, Cole." Hello, Dave. Happy Sunday. Thank you for dropping a comment. I really appreciate you tuning in live tonight. Some other comments that came in that weren't related to this story, just if you have any other comments related to this story, I'll read them. But just Nick DJ, I think he's saying this, or they are saying this, in relation to our Illinois story, which we'll cover here in a bit. They said, "Let me guess, they want to go after hemp too." Maybe. I've certainly seen some of the people that are at the press conference say they want to go after hemp. But at the same time, I've also seen the representative that was at that press conference introduce hemp legislation. So I should say hemp legislation that was supported by people in the hemp industry. I also know people that are not supportive of that legislation, so I shouldn't paint with too broad of a brush. Genetic Memory Farms also said, in relation to the Illinois story that we'll be discussing in a moment, they said they get relief when we remove license caps and excessive costs for applications. Yeah, I think definitely on that second part. On the first part, I don't know. I think some people involved in this might be supportive of the license caps. I could be wrong though. From what they've said in the past, though, I'm led to believe that. Okay, here are some comments related to that story. They say, "I mean, he could have had my name on that receipt with those products, and I'm not admitting anything." Yeah, I agree. Somebody else, Genetic Memory Farm, said, "My comment would be, don't the local cops have violent crime to deal with in their city versus chasing down some weed from Michigan?" Exactly. That's a really good point. It seems like they could um, really focus on other things. And I would be interested to see how much time these people got, or if, I don't even know if that's decided yet. But when you consider some of the light sentences people get for infractions that I would argue are much more serious, for example, I just saw somebody in a town in Illinois who got charged, or allegedly, well, no, they got charged with touching a 4-year-old kid, and their sentence was 30 months. If you look, I mean, look, we just had, if you go to colememo.com/isitlegal, we had somebody that served 8 years of a 30-year sentence in the state of Illinois for cannabis trafficking. I'm saying in air quotes. I don't, that seems wrong. Somebody gets 30 years for cannabis trafficking. Meanwhile, somebody who potentially could have ruined a kid's life gets 30 months in prison. And this isn't like a unique story here. People charged with crimes like that. It's just, I know that's a really dark example, but it's one that I saw earlier today. The disparity in which these non-violent offenses, like the sentencing for these non-violent offenses compared to some seriously vile offenses, is just disgusting. Someone said, I get your point about amount, but 5 pounds plus per person going to an illicit state would point to redistribution. I don't know, man. I get I'll just start by saying I get your point. But when I grow cannabis, I've gotten that much and I'm not redistributing it. Um I also again, if you're driving from Tennessee to Michigan, that's a really long drive and the cannabis is so cheap. Some people just buy in bulk, and I don't think anything's necessarily wrong with that. Um but back to your point, I guess maybe you could assume they were redistributing it, but I don't know. I've personally purchased that much and I don't redistribute it. I redistribute it into my own body, but I don't know. Um, Still, it's a good comment and I appreciate you tuning in and commenting. So, um, I just also want to mention before I move to the next subject that you can call into the show at colememo.com/live. We're taking callers. You don't have to show your face. You can literally just call in and you don't have to call in via your phone. You go to colememo.com/live. You tap the join button. You type your name in, or if you don't want to type in your name, that's fine too. And you can join the show. It's been a while since we've had callers, so feel free if you'd like to call in, you can do so. All right, well, let's cover a local story real quick before we get to some of the headline stories of this newscast. In case you didn't know, Senate Bill 42 recently passed the Senate thanks to the support that you all gave the bill. And in case you didn't know, Senate Bill 42 would eliminate the requirement that cannabis be stored in Illinois, in vehicles in Illinois in an odor-proof container. The bill would still require cannabis be kept in a sealed, child-resistant container. The bill does not change existing DUI laws. It also maintains the rule that cannabis must be out of reach while a vehicle is on the road, preventing access by both drivers and passengers. As I said at the beginning of the show, the law currently treats the transportation of cannabis in a non-odor-proof container as a Class A misdemeanor. And I think that's the headline. Usually the headlines are about police searching your vehicle, but I've talked to many lawyers who have said that people have been charged with a Class A misdemeanor, which you can also get up to a year in jail for simply admitting, yes, officer, the reason my car smells like cannabis is because I just went to the dispensary. The officer turns around and says, well, I shouldn't be smelling that. So that's a Class A misdemeanor. And by the way, I'm going to search your car, which is a problem. So Senate Bill 42 needs to pass through a House committee and then the House. And that committee hearing will be happening on Tuesday, May 6th at 4 p.m. So we need you to, if you support ending police's ability to search your car and charge you with a Class A misdemeanor based solely on the smell of cannabis, go to colememo.com/odorproof. Once again, that's colememo.com/ODORPROOF. If you're not sure how to file a witness slip, which is what you'll need to do to show support for the bill, no worries. Instructions can be found at colememo.com/odorproof. I would also recommend that you reach out to your House representatives to let them know that you support the bill. I'm hoping this will be the last time that you would need to file a witness slip on this issue, but I said that last week. The hearing got rescheduled, which means we have to file more witness slips. Every time a hearing gets rescheduled, you have to file more witness slips. I know it's inconvenient. A lot of people have asked me, Cole, I filed a witness slip last time. Do I need to do it again? Yes. The bill is scheduled to be heard in a House committee again, like I just said, on Tuesday, May 6th, and it needs as much support as possible to move forward. The last few times it's been called, law enforcement outnumbered our witness slips. The first time it was called in the Senate, which is where we got the bill through and ultimately onto the Senate floor, we actually outnumbered law enforcement. But the last few times, law enforcement has outnumbered us in witness slips. So I've covered this topic extensively with legal professionals on my podcast, and I've written about it at colememo.com. If you go to colememo.com/odorproof for those instructions, you'll also see some of my coverage. It's also something I detailed in my mini documentary, which you can watch now at colememo.com/minidoc. So, check that out. So yeah, be sure to support that bill if you haven't already. Okay, well, let's move on to our next story. And yeah, we'll do that right after this message.
Sun-Drenched Farm is the manifestation of my dream to be able to provide for my family through offering natural alternative forms of healing and wellness, the same forms that I've been so fortunate to experience on my journey in healing from Lyme disease. With in-house cultivation, solventless extraction, and final product manufacturing, we're able to offer the highest quality product that you can find now at sundrenchedfarm.com.
All right. By the way, on Monday, we'll be going live around 4 p.m. So if you want to come back and join us, should be a good time. Mason from Sun-Drenched Farm, that message that you just saw, will be joining us. We'll be talking about how he started his small cannabis business. Before we move on, Just Nick DJ commented and said, "Thank you for covering this and getting it out there." Absolutely. Gotta just trying to help, just trying to help protect cannabis consumers, honestly. So, all right. Well, let's move to one of our headline stories, which is Illinois operators calling for some relief on burdensome regulations. We'll start this off. I've actually got a video, but we'll start this off by reading some reporting by the Chicago Sun-Times. So, Illinois cannabis business owners are pleading for relief from the state's steep licensing fees and overly burdensome regulations. State Representative LaShawn Ford, joining several of those business owners Sunday at a news conference on the near west side, urged his colleagues in the Illinois General Assembly to reform the state's recreational and medical cannabis laws to give social equity licensees a fair playing field in the market. Saying, quote, I believe this is Representative Ford saying this, quote, "Recreational cannabis legalization was really sold to the General Assembly and the community to end the war on drugs and to help rebuild the communities that were hardest hit," end quote. That was a quote by Ford, who the Chicago Sun-Times says has long championed social equity efforts in the state's legal marijuana industry. Another quote by LaShawn Ford, quote, "The truth is the dream of being a cannabis owner in Illinois." Oh, I'm going to restart that quote because I feel like I'm reading the quote wrong. Let's restart that, shall we? We're live, by the way. Comment below. I'm curious to hear what you think so far about this story and if you have any thoughts that come up. Let's restart that quote. He said, quote, "The truth is the dream of being a cannabis business owner in Illinois is falling far short," end quote. Patricia Van Pelt, a former state senator who represented parts of the West Side until 2023, also joined the Sunday news conference. She advocated for legalizing recreational cannabis while she was in office, but she removed herself as a co-sponsor of the legalization bill after reports on her investments in cannabis-related businesses hit the news. And that's actually something else that's covered in my mini documentary. If you go to colememo.com/minidoc, it's free to stream. It's a fun watch. I've got citations for everything I cover. Check it out. Van Pelt said, quote, "When I stood and negotiated for this bill, I believed that we were bringing help to the community. What I've seen happen across these last few years has been astonishing to me. We never meant to defund the Black community. We never meant to leave them floundering and trying to survive with no lifeboat and no help," end quote. Van Pelt listed 4, quote, "urgent demands," end quote, to help the cannabis industry survive and give small business owners a chance to thrive. 1, put a moratorium. I'm going to restart that one. Put a moratorium on licensing fees and provide a credit for fees paid before the dispensary was operational. That is certainly an interesting one. It's an idea I've discussed on the show in the past. Like, these people have been paying fees for dispensary licenses, properties, everything else before they were even operational. And I've always thought these operators should demand the state give them back that money, especially when they know, at least for the licensing fees, when they know that the dispensary wasn't even operational. Like if the whole goal was to help these people, why don't you fucking help these people? Throw them a bone, right? Point number 2, provide equitable access to capital and grant funding to, quote, ensure the growth and stability of licensed operators, end quote. I thought this was a good point. They want to give people grant funding, not access to loans because you have to pay those back. Give them grant funding to, like they said, ensure the growth and stability of licensed operators. Point number 3, and this one is interesting to me because I'd like to know more about what they mean. They say that we should amend the, quote, overly burdensome, end quote, regulations and reduce the, quote, crushing taxes, end quote, that drive customers to, quote, illicit markets, end quote, or to dispensaries in nearby states with lower tax rates. I think they're talking about Michigan. So that's point number 3. And like I said, I'd love to hear more details about what they mean about ending overly burdensome regulations. We'll watch a small news clip on overly burdensome regulations, specifically how some of the cannabis regulations compare to opioid regulations, which I know, buckle up for that one. It's kind of crazy. Point number 4 was that, and you've heard coverage on this, not only on this show, but by several news outlets. Point number 4 that they demand was allow customers with medical cannabis cards to shop at any licensed dispensary. And the article continues, there's currently no legislation in the works to address these demands, but Ford told the Sun-Times he intends to draft a bill that includes those issues. I cannot wait to see that bill because, again, with relation to point number 3, I want to see what they mean when they're talking about amending the overly burdensome regulations. I understand what they mean when they say reduce the crushing taxes that drive customers elsewhere. But what sort of regulations are we looking at amending here? Because I have a few ideas. So yeah, let's watch the news clip on this, shall we? And before we do that, we've got some comments coming in. Tom said, Tom from the Chicago Cannabis Company, which you can check out one of our most recent episodes. It features Tom. He said big MMJ companies had a lot of influence on the legislation. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the shortcomings of the CRTA, which hasn't been updated in 5 years. Yes, I agree, and well said. He also said the cannabis industry is fast moving. Regulations haven't caught up yet. No delivery yet, for example. Absolutely. And this is something that, as I said earlier, you can get these cannabis sodas delivered straight to your door. Meanwhile, cannabis that's grown in Illinois under the CRTA framework cannot be delivered. Even though Governor Pritzker has expressed support for such an idea in the past, the legislature hasn't put anything on his desk and nothing has moved. I think that was like 2 years ago that idea was floated to Governor Pritzker, and he said he'd be in support of it. So, and lastly, before we watch this news clip, Genetic Memory Farms says, seems like what we really need to do is remove the license caps if we want to lower fees. They are intrinsically linked to the revenue the state wants in exchange for a framework, either fees and caps or neither. I think it's an interesting idea that you bring up. Let's watch the news clip, some news coverage on this press conference. Here it is.
Too many fees and too many regulations. Those are the complaints from a group of cannabis business owners.
Social equity license holders say they're struggling to stay afloat and they need state lawmakers to step in. WGN's Jewel Hillary reports.
We really believed in this vision of truly creating economic growth and empowerment within our organizations.
Husband and wife, Rick and Michelle Ringgold, are business partners in the cannabis industry. The couple owns Galaxy in South suburban Richton Park. They got into business several years ago after state lawmakers passed legislation making recreational cannabis legal. Now the Ringolds have recreational licenses to grow, distribute, and transport cannabis. But they say strict state regulations, high taxes, and limited capital are making it challenging to stay afloat.
Nobody sleeps at night when everything you own is tied up into uncertainty, and that's where we are.
On Sunday morning, the Ringolds stood in unity with several other entrepreneurs who have cannabis social equity licenses.
The social equity program was meant to right some of the wrongs caused by decades of criminalization and systematic exclusion from the cannabis industry.
Overall, I think all of us had various financial projections based off assumptions before we opened up, and we'd had to throw those out of the window.
To get into the market, craft grow, $10 million. We've mortgaged our homes. We've liquidated our 401k plans. We have went to family and friends to get money.
State Representative LaShawn Ford says the state promised social equity businesses grants to help offset costs, but that money has not been awarded yet.
We want to make sure that we pass legislation to provide the grants, not loans, to these social equity companies. We also want to pass legislation to allow for these social equity dispensaries to allow medical patients to use their dispensaries at the same rate that they are paid at the medical dispensaries. That would help out a great deal.
In the days to come, advocates are headed to Springfield to demand the following. They want lawmakers to impose a moratorium on licensing fees and provide a credit for fees paid before businesses were operating, allow equitable access to capital and grant funding, amend regulations and reduce taxes, and allow medical patients to use medical cards at any licensed dispensary.
What's hurting us the most across the board is the over-regulation, the excessive fees.
A lot of things that we thought would happen from a legislative standpoint really didn't happen, and we don't know when it's going to happen.
Reporting in the Loop, I'm Jewel Hillary, WGN News.
All right, folks, comment below and we can display your comment. We've had some really good comments come in. Also, if you go to colememo.com/live, we're taking callers. So you can call in. You don't have to turn your video on. You don't even have to tell us your name. You can just, join, drop your thoughts if you'd like. It's super easy to join. People have done it in the past, and it's always a lot of fun. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It's appreciated. I haven't been consuming much cannabis at all lately, and I'll be talking about it in a future episode that's about to drop at colememo.com/Patreon. But tonight, I'm cracking open a cold one. Let's do it. Cheers, folks. Okay, so overburdensome regulation, right? Let's talk about that. I can give you a great example where we are arguably regulating cannabis more strictly than we're regulating opioids. Before we get to that, it looks like we had a comment come in. Tom says, sales are down, but customers still have purchasing caps. So even if they want to spend more money with you, they can't. And that's silly. I completely agree. Man. It's that's another thing I like about these drinks. I'm not even, speaking of which, if you didn't know, you can get some of these drinks at drinkcantrip.com/colememo. That'll give you a 15% discount. One of the things I love about the framework behind these drinks is they're called hemp, and that means that you can purchase as much as you want. You can possess as much as you want. And I think it's ridiculous that you can't do that with cannabis in Illinois under the CRTA framework. It's just crazy. So, another instance in which the regulations are insane, like I was just saying, is that we arguably regulate cannabis tighter than we do opioids. I'm curious what you all think about this. And to back up what I just said, we're going to watch a news clip. Be sure to comment below while we watch this news clip, because I'm really curious what you have to say about this. Every time I've shared this news clip, people are like, what? I didn't even know this was the case. Roll the tape.
Now, NBC5 investigates. Illinois has very tight rules for how cannabis can be transported and delivered.
In fact, those rules are stricter than the federal guidelines for opioids, the most abused drug in America. Here's the story from Phil Rogers.
Do we have more to grab? Yeah.
We're at a distribution center for Cresco Labs in suburban Chicago. And what these workers are loading
3365
is one of the most tightly controlled cargoes in America. The cargo is legal cannabis, at least legal in the eyes of the state of Illinois. But the rules for how it's transported are spelled out in pages of state regulations.
Security is aware of every shipment that goes out, where it's heading, what time they should arrive.
That security actually starts all the way back when the cannabis plants are grown. Each plant receives its own barcoded number. And those numbers follow the plants and their products through processing here at Cresco's suburban facilities, all the way through packaging, transport, and delivery to dispensaries statewide.
Correct. And we refer to as seed to sale.
Illinois law requires cannabis transporters to move their wares in vehicles where the products are locked tight in a separate compartment. Then there's a second set of locked doors outside. The trucks can't be marked, and at least one crew member has to stay in the vehicle at all times.
What is this? This is our tracking software platform.
Cresco's fleet is monitored in real time. Onboard cameras provide a view inside and outside the trucks, and GPS will alert the company if the truck tries to cross state lines.
We know exactly where they're at all times.
But there's a bit of irony here. Remember, in the eyes of the federal government, cannabis is still illegal. But the Illinois guidelines for transporting pot are much stricter than the federal rules for moving much more dangerous drugs.
It was very casual. All of the product would go into my personal vehicle in just a standard Coleman cooler.
Cresco's logistics manager, Joseph Franks, told us he used to work for a major hospital, transporting everything from chemotherapy drugs to prescription painkillers.
Where would it be in the car?
It would be in my back seat.
The DEA's position on moving even the most abused drugs in America, opioids like OxyContin, is that licensees are simply responsible for getting them where they are supposed to go. The federal regs say all applicants and registrants shall provide effective controls and procedures to guard against theft and diversion of controlled substances.
We do have millions and millions of controlled substances that are moved through the system, through the mail, through UPS, through FedEx.
Former DEA agent Jack Titleman now works as a consultant on compliance with drug regulations.
If you decide that your method of distribution is on the back of a bicycle and on a backpack because that fits into that neighborhood and you've never had an issue, then that might be the correct way of making that delivery into that neighborhood.
2811.
That is not the case with marijuana in Illinois.
Illinois is the most heavily regulated state that we operate in.
Heavily regulated and lucrative, with nearly $1.8 billion in sales since it was legalized in Illinois just 2 years ago. Phil Rogers, NBC5 investigates.
Okay, I'm curious what you all think about that. We've got some comments coming in that are brilliant. Drop your comments below. You can also call into colememo.com/live. Broadcast your comments right on the air. Just before I start reading the comments that have come in, I think it's so notable to hear that consultant that used to work with the DEA saying, if you decide that delivering your product on a bicycle is okay with you and that you can do that with opioids. The same cannot be said about cannabis in Illinois, or I shouldn't say most states, because we've talked to operators from Oregon, for example, who they didn't deliver their product on a bicycle, but just like that person from Cresco Labs said, they just throw it in the front seat of their car. And it would just seem like, that would be all right. Meanwhile, the regs that we currently have spell out that you have to basically transport cannabis like it's nuclear material. Let's make sure it doesn't leave the state. Let's watch it at all times. Cameras, it's got to be double locked. We're acting like it's a dangerous substance. And to the comment that just came in, Tom G says Schedule 1 does not make sense for cannabis, and that's the root of a lot of these issues. Well said. Well said. We're treating it like it's a Schedule 1 substance, while in most ways we're treating it like a Schedule 1 substance, but then on the other hand, we're selling it over the counter. And that's what I wonder when, to bring it back to the story that we started this whole tangent off with these cannabis business owners asking for relief. I can't help from the overburdensome regulations. I can't help but wonder if this meets that if this is on their list, I guess I should say. Like, this is ridiculous. And even big business is complaining about that. Like the people in that report were from Cresco Labs, which is one of the biggest cannabis businesses in the state. And if they're complaining about the strictness, the over regulations with regard to transport, I can't imagine how this affects, the small guy, if you will. So curious what you all think about it. Drop your comments below. I'll be happy to read them on screen. We are just about to segue to our next topic. So curious what you all thought about that. We'll be right back after this message.
Are you all ready for America's new #1 D9 gummy line? That's right. We are bringing to you Parody Gummy. These vegan gummies are manufactured in a safe harbor facility, so you know they're going to be clean and safe, and they're not going to give you any of the runaround. Coming in, we have 3 amazing flavors for you. We have the Raspberry Riots. Also, we have the Sleepy Joes if you need something to help you sleep at night. And if you're feeling like raging and having a party time, that's right, we have the Pineapple Bad Hombre. If you're feeling like a bad hombre, make sure you head over to www.parodygummy.com and secure your bag today.
Yes, thank you, Jason from High at 9 News. He's got his own little gummy line with some funny products. Speaking of Sleepy Joe, you might know that Joe Biden initiated the rescheduling process. So back to Tom's comment, Schedule 1 doesn't make sense for cannabis. The HHS recently recommended, based off of Joe Biden's directive, that cannabis should be rescheduled to Schedule 3, which still is a problem, because when you can, from my perspective at least, when you consider that alcohol and tobacco are descheduled substances, hemp is too, by the way, it feels silly that marijuana, I'm saying in air quotes because that's the legal term for products that are sold under state programs like the CRTA. It seems ridiculous that they would be treated as controlled substances at all, right? Especially when you read like the first few words out of the CRTA. And why don't we pull it up? If you're wondering, by the way, because I've said CRTA a few times, that is the law that has created this limited framework for the sale of cannabis within the state of Illinois. And I will display the law on the screen here in just a moment. Literally, some of the first words out of that law are as follows. In the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime, the General Assembly finds that the use of cannabis should be legal for persons 21 years of age or older and should be taxed in a manner similar to alcohol. In the interest of the health and public safety of the residents of Illinois, the General Assembly further finds and declares that cannabis should be regulated in a manner similar to alcohol. And they list off a few different things here. But I think we should treat it like it. And that's what's funny when you take yourself back to the roots of this movement, if you will. A lot of the signs that you'd see, a lot of the talking points that you would hear is, let's legalize cannabis like alcohol and tobacco. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that, especially when you're talking about these overburdensome regulations, not only with transport, but like Tom said here a little bit earlier, these purchasing caps and possession caps. Like, I always use that as my example for some of the problems that I have with the cannabis industry as it exists in many states. When I first turned 21, I took the trip to Colorado, and I remember. Sorry if you've heard me tell this story before, but I just try to tell people this. I went in. I had like probably $1,000 on me, and I was gonna spend it all at one shop, which is silly in retrospect. You should really shop around, see what everybody has. But that's what I was gonna do. I was new. I was green. I was excited. And I went in and I was like, I want this, I want that, I want that. And they were like, whoa, 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 you're already over your limit. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? My limit? That's when I first became familiar with the concept of purchase limits and possession limits. And I thought that because it was legal, that my limit was just how much money I was bringing into the store. I learned a lot that day. I learned that I always like to say it this way. It's like cannabis is legal, but it's not that legal. Whoa, slow down. It's not that legal. It's just kind of legal. And I guess just to briefly cap off what I'm saying here before I segue to our next story, which has to do with uh, Donald Trump's nominee for the DEA, is that yeah, it's just not completely legal. And some of these regulations, it would seem that we would benefit from removing them. So, going to be completely honest, I lost my train of thought halfway through there. Maybe it's because I started sipping on some drink can trip. Who knows? I haven't smoked in a while, so it might be hitting me a little bit harder than it used to. Tom just commented, if we regulated alcohol like cannabis, I wonder if people would ask the bartender for a COA to confirm alcohol content in their beer. That's a funny one. Okay, so how do we segue to this? So Donald Trump, our president, picked somebody to lead the DEA. His name's Terrence Cole. I wonder if he'll issue a new memo, the Cole memo. Yeah, so he is going to be leading the DEA, and he recently went through a hearing in which people had the opportunity to ask him different questions. And during that hearing, he said, examining that proposal from Joe Biden to federally reschedule marijuana will be one of my first priorities. Let's watch the clip and we'll have some discussion about this. Here is the moment where he was asked about rescheduling marijuana.
What are your views on the DEA's proposed rescheduling of marijuana, and what role do you see yourself playing in ensuring the process moves forward responsibly?
So, Senator, thank you. And if confirmed, it'll be one of my first priorities when I arrive at DEA to see where we are in the administrative process. I'm not familiar exactly where we are, but I know the process has been delayed numerous times, and it's time to move forward.
Okay, well, the process that's undergoing is to move marijuana to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. So we're maybe somewhere in the process. Are you committed to seeing it to fruition?
I need to understand more where they are and look at the science behind it and listen to the experts and really understand where they are in the process.
We know where we are. We know what the directive is. Get it to Schedule 3. Are you committed to seeing it to fruition?
So I don't know. I haven't seen that.
So you're leaving the door open to changing course as to...
I'm leaving the door open to studying everything that's been done so far so I can make a determination, sir.
So make myself a note here. No answer to that particular question.
All right. And I'd be curious to see this discussion go on. Somebody responded to Tom and said, well, the COA is printed on the can or the bottle. Its ABV, packaging, plan of origin, and best buy date are printed on it. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that cannabis could do that as well. You know, these products, for example, they've got a QR code where you can, scan. There you go. Tom just said basically he's joking. where's the third party QR code? And as I was just about to show on screen, these drinks, for example, have a QR code that you can scan that take you to the test itself, which I think Tom's point is I've never personally seen a similar thing on an alcoholic beverage. You just kind of take the side of the can for its word. And it's interesting how cannabis has this whole structure of third party testing. And, I mean, it's interesting, but it's like I say, there are differences, I think. And I think that's notable. So, okay. So we just watched that. Terrence Cole, he was asked about rescheduling. He said that it's going to be one of his first priorities to see where it's at in the administrative process. Let's watch some coverage from another show that I watch. It's called The Dales Report. Shout out to them. Definitely check them out. They have some really amazing guests, including the one that we're about to watch a segment of. This guy is named Shane Pennington, and I do believe that let's just check this out. If you Google his name, Shane Pennington, rescheduling, I believe he was actually behind. Well, and of course we can't, because he's you're going to find a lot of different things when you search up his name. But I do believe that he was a person that was able to get the recommendation to ultimately be released to the public. So for a while, HHS and I think he was the person that helped to unveil HHS's scheduling recommendation to the DEA. I could be wrong on that. Yeah, here, I'll just display this news story that I found on Cannabis Law Report. It says, attorneys Shane Pennington and Matt Zorn share Fed docs, 250 plus pages of redacted documents on marijuana rescheduling recommendation detailing cannabis's medical value. So for a while, when this rescheduling process started, it was hard to get HHS or anybody to really release any information. And this attorney helped to make some information public. So it's just another example of the Dales Report being able to land some really awesome guests. They've had some guests that have been on this show, like the CEO of Cresco Labs, who was featured, a company rather that was featured earlier in this episode in that report. They've had really big guests on their show. So I just wanted to give them a proper shout out before I played this clip where they kind of talk about their take on this whole thing. And then I'll actually show you a part where they respond to me on the show. Let's watch this clip first, though.
To talk about, including obviously Terry Cole. We're still waiting to see if he will indeed be confirmed as the head of the DEA. And he said, obviously, in the announcement earlier this week that once confirmed, one of his first priorities in the job will be reviewing marijuana rescheduling, which was great to hear, to say the least. So what do you make of that? Is that, I guess, how much weight should we put into that? And, again, I'll say I think it was a good thing because we've never heard something like that before. But how did you interpret it?
I think it's a really good thing. The reason being that, I've been on a couple times, I don't guess very recently, but as this is all unfolded, and I've said consistently that, look, once the administration turns their attention to this, it can be done very quickly, right? And if that's their will and they want to do it, it will get done. And I stand by that. And the thing that has changed is they have turned their attention to it, because there's no way that the nominee went in front of Congress and, said that and didn't mean it and didn't know that should be one of his priorities. Now, he, of course, was careful not to say, how exactly he was, intending to act, but that's normal, par for the course. It'd be very strange for him to do otherwise under the circumstances. And the fact of the matter is, if what he said is true, he's the boss at DEA. Yeah. And it is pretty easy for them to wrap this up one way or the other. They have lots of options, but I take it as a very good thing that we're going to get movement. Something's going to happen. We're going to move forward. And one way or the other, any movement at this point, I think all roads do lead to Rome. Some are more circuitous than others. Some will take longer, more steps than others. But there's just no way around it at this point on the record and just the science that's out there that, I think that once we move, we'll be moving in a positive direction.
In terms.
So again, great show, The Dales Report. You can check them out at thedalesreport.com. We're going to play another clip where they kind of respond to something that was brought to my attention. I saw it on Twitter. I also did a little bit of research, and it looked like it had also been reported by outlets like Marijuana Moment. Let's just watch the clip really quick, and then I'll kind of unpack what they discuss here.
It's a good thing, but at the same time, too, we need to understand the process of it all, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's looking pretty black and white.
Yeah.
Unless we got something out of left field and someone's been lying the entire time.
The Cole memo writes, Shad AV, do we have any concerns about Terry Cole's post in 2024 on social media where he says, quote, everybody knows my stance on marijuana. Just say no. I think it's a clear indication that why would he say what he said this week when one of his first priorities is about the rescheduling of marijuana?
I mean, I haven't seen that post, so I don't even know if it's real, to be completely honest. And at the same time, what DEA head or what figure in the public is going to sit there and publicly endorse marijuana use? I think when it's coming from someone like that, a lot of it is focused on adolescent use. A lot of it is focused on illicit use. And I'm going to go by what he said in that hearing, and I'm going to go by what he's going to do moving forward. We'll see.
Common sense question is how's this?
I mean, not legal for distribution. That's a true statement.
Right.
It's not federally legal.
Right.
So it is what it is.
How has the history of this country viewed cannabis? So name me the head of a DEA that's actually endorsed or actually talked positively about cannabis in the past. It hasn't, but this is the time that we're in. And again, I'll continue to repeat myself. It's law and order with this Trump administration. And as we've
Okie dokie. So yeah, they in that segment that you just saw, they questioned whether or not that post was real. It is real. I will actually pull it up right now. It's on LinkedIn. I'm displaying my screen. I'm on Terrence Cole's LinkedIn page. You can see that here, and he said, let's read his full comment because I think it is notable. I don't think that, I hear what they're saying, and I agree that somebody from the DEA might not talk positively about cannabis, but this seems, well, let's just read it. He says, surprise visit to, and this was a year ago that he made this post. So I will just start this whole thing off by saying people can change their minds. That's possible. But let's read what he says. So, surprise visit to Virginia Cannabis Control Authority to say hello to our amazing employees. Everybody knows my stance on marijuana after 30 plus years in law enforcement, so don't even ask. And the hashtags, I think, are what is most notable. And I didn't include them all in my comment that just because there was a character limit. Anthony specifically from the show specifically pointed out that I included this hashtag not legal for distribution. And he said, yeah, that's absolutely right. But these are the comments that kind of stand out to me. Hashtag just say no. Hashtag disorders. Hashtag health issues. Hashtag thin blue line. Hashtag back the blue. Setting aside the thin blue line and back the blue ones, hashtag just say no, hashtag disorders, and hashtag health issues just make me wonder about where Terry Cole stands. I don't know if he goes by Terry. Yeah, it keeps, Terrence. Mr. Cole. I don't know where he stands on this issue, but when you see these things, I can't help but wonder. And it'll just be interesting to see how this plays out. That's all I will say. And I felt like that was a valid question. I felt like because he said he wants to see the science. He wouldn't commit to rescheduling. And like Mr. Pennington said, maybe that's normal in confirmation hearings. I actually had pasted that comment because I wanted to hear what Shane Pennington had to say about these things because, again, I just felt like it was notable that this person who said they're committed to seeing where we are in that rescheduling process, I felt it was notable that in the past they said everybody knows my stance on marijuana after 30 plus years in law enforcement, so don't even ask. I mean, he doesn't say what his stance is explicitly, but again, the inclusion of the just say no, the inclusion of the disorders, the inclusion of health issues, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a positive thing. And I guess back to their point, what did I expect? Did I expect him to put hashtag blaze it, hashtag smoke weed every day? No, I didn't. But these seem like negative things. I don't know. I feel like that was a fair question. So, yeah, I'm just curious what you all think. We just got a comment in. Genetic Memory Farms says, I think expecting or even putting energy into federal change for the next 4 years is kind of a waste. Best we can hope for is nothing. If we want to make progress, focus on the state and local level. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And Tom responded with a really good comment. He said, maybe his personal stance doesn't matter as much when his position changes and he's forced to review the medical research. I sure hope so. We've had people from prohibitionist groups in the past that have pointed critiques on the 250 pages of HHS recommendations, which should be the science that he's reviewing. But that's the thing. I don't know how all this works. Like, I don't know if he's able to take that in addition to other science that he's aware of. Who knows? And if you do know, please drop a comment below because I'd be interested to learn. Because I'm just trying to learn with all of this, share kind of what I've heard, and that's why I felt like it was notable to talk about this post because it's all really vague, right? He wouldn't commit to seeing the rescheduling process through. Maybe that's normal, like Shane Pennington said. He did say it's going to be one of his first priorities if he's confirmed. So hopefully we'll know the answer soon if he's confirmed. I thought that was super notable. Now, I do want to play another comment that was made during this hearing. Let's check it out. Here we go. And this questioning comes from Tillis. I can't think of what his first name is right now because I'm telling you that Tom Tillis, U.S. Senator Tom Tillis. Let's watch this clip from the hearing. I think this one's actually notable. Super interesting to see what's said here.
At the end of the day, I don't want, I feel like we should get to a better place to allow states to, if they choose to have medical marijuana dispensed for medical purposes or recreational purposes, I think, or does it make sense to you that we've really reached a point to where it's confusing to the population, it's confusing to law enforcement? Have we reached a point to where we should assess the ability for us to create a framework that deals with crop protection, because the sort of a tobacco framework. So we've got a lot of illicit inputs. Now, I'm not suggesting that in the case of the Cherokee, but a lot of illicit inputs into so-called legal streams. We've got variances of potency. We're getting reports now that some of the so-called legal non-marijuana Delta 8 derivatives are as potent or more potent than the illegal marijuana. It's very confusing. But does it make sense at some point for law enforcement purposes that we should come up with the rules of the road so there's consistent application across the 50 states?
I think this is definitely worthy of a working group because, to your earlier points, we need to stay ahead of it. Yes.
Yeah. And I think we're getting behind. And the concern that I have if we don't act, there's going to be a race for potency. They're already trying to do it with the isolation and the amplification of molecules. But what happens when they run out of gas and they need to add something else to it if we don't have a national framework to make sure that that's not fentanyl or some other substance that differentiates a product of going a little bit further. I think it's a looming public health crisis. It's also a law enforcement challenge that we need to work on. And I look forward to supporting your nomination, and also look forward to getting your response back on some of these matters that the Biden administration absolutely gave me a non-response to. Thank you all. Look forward to supporting your nominations.
Senator Wells.
All right. So I thought that response was interesting for a few different reasons. Hemp sort of came up in that line of questioning from Mr. Tillis. I thought it was just interesting to hear him say, yeah, I mean, maybe we should get a working group regarding the idea that we should have a national framework for this, because he didn't say this necessarily, but there are a patchwork of regulations, and maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to get a little bit of clarity. It is interesting, a lot of people say, just because hemp came up, they were like, well, there's this, what a lot of people will say that I would typically are against the concept of hemp as it currently is known. They'll say one plant, one set of rules. And what I think is interesting about that idea is that for hemp, there is one set of rules, right? It all has to do with that 0.3% delta 9 THC. Now, if we add the 3-pillar approach on top of that, and maybe even extend that arbitrary threshold of 0.3% THC, we would have one set of rules, a national framework, age gating, labeling, and testing mandates. One set of rules, one plant, one set of rules, as opposed to the way that it is now, where we have one set of rules for hemp. And I should clarify, there are states that have crafted regulations around hemp, Minnesota, for example, and they have like serving sizes and different regulations for that. So it is possible, just like there are local, I believe in Chicago, if I remember correctly from a city hall meeting that actually happened to be about hemp, they talked about how the city of Chicago, or maybe some wards in the city of Chicago, please comment below if you know more about this than me, prevent the sale of those little shooters of alcohol. They don't like sell that in Chicago, which they sell them fucking right up front in the gas stations in southern and central Illinois. You can just grab one of those fucking things, right? It's not behind the counter or anything. Sometimes it's right by the candy. I've posted posts on social media where it's right next to the chips and candy. Just grab your little shooter of Jack Daniels. From what I understand, cities like Chicago, or maybe certain localities within Chicagoland, don't allow for those form factors of alcohol to be sold, which I thought was interesting. Similarly, back to the subject of hemp, states like Minnesota, for example, have certain regulations that don't necessarily exist in other states with regard to like serving sizes and servings per package. I'm not from Minnesota, so I'm not extremely familiar. I'm just loosely familiar that these regulations exist. So again, to kind of wrap it back around, I see there's some comments coming back in. I say one plant, one set of rules on the side of hemp. There can definitely be a patchwork of regulations, and I think that's fine. And I think it would be fair to say that that exists with other products as well. But as it stands today with marijuana, I'm saying that in air quotes to refer to the legal term, which again, marijuana in air quotes is what is sold under the state regulated programs. It is treated as a Schedule 1 substance, which is why we see these burdensome regulations in many states. There are like 45 different rules for medical marijuana. Again, I say in air quotes. And then there's, 24 different sets of rules for adult use. So I don't know. The whole one plant, one rules thing falls a little flat when you consider the patchwork of regulations. But again, yeah, I'm for that. Let's do it. One plant, one set of rules. Let's deschedule the cannabis plant. Let's employ the 3-pillar approach, which again is age gating. Pick an age, whether it's 18 or 21. I don't know what's an adult. You pick an age that makes you feel happy. Labeling requirements. The products must be labeled truthfully, just like every other product. And if they aren't, use the mechanisms within the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to punish people for mislabeling products. And then thirdly, there must be a testing mandate for these products, and that goes hand in hand with the labeling mandate, right? So I think that's the way we do one plant, one set of rules. Okay, so we are going to comments. Somebody said pairs suspiciously well with a 99-cent fountain drink. America has a drunk driving problem. Oh, I think you're talking about the little shooters of alcohol. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think this is going to be interesting to see how this proceeds. I think rescheduling is better than nothing, but if you were to ask me, I think descheduling is better than rescheduling. I think that's the way that we should move forward. So it'll be interesting to see. I wanted to kind of zoom out and do a little bit of national coverage for you all, because that is something that I don't know what it'll mean for cannabis in Illinois or in any other state, but rescheduling will apparently relieve some of these operators from the 280E, the inability to deduct earnings from your taxes, or I guess expenses, I think it would be. Yeah, the 280E, if you're selling a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 substance, from what I understand, you are not able to take normal business deductions, which means that it's pretty hard for these marijuana companies to be profitable. I think the only one right now that is in the black, as investors say, or in other words, profitable, is GTI, who also just so happens to be in hemp, I should just say. So if it moved to Schedule 3, from what I understand, they wouldn't have to do with 280E at a federal level anymore. The state of Illinois made it so that you don't have to deal with 280E at the state level if you're selling cannabis under the CRTA. So that's been solved at a state level, but you still have to deal with that at a federal level. We've had some accountants on the show to talk about that in the past. Aside from that, I don't know what else rescheduling would mean for the cannabis industry in the state of Illinois, because for all intents and purposes, the drug would still be scheduled. And I'm not aware of a Schedule 3 drug that is sold in the way that we sell cannabis. And what I mean by that is over the counter to adults 21 years of age or older. I'm not aware of any Schedule 3 drug that is just over the counter sold to adults without a prescription. Now, with regard to medical cannabis, the reason getting a medical card is not called a prescription to medical cannabis is because of, I believe, how the Controlled Substances Act works, and maybe something to do with the FDA. I don't know exactly. But my point is, medical cannabis would also fall outside of that framework. And the long story short is, I'm trying to say both medical and adult use cannabis would, I think, from my layman point of view, and please, if you're a legal expert and know more than me, drop a comment and let me know, but they would still fall outside of the legal framework. In other words, this would still be federally illegal activity, because think about I'm not aware of another medicine where you can get a recommendation from a doctor, a Schedule 3 recommendation, and you go to the pharmacy and look at a shelf and go, "Oh, I want that, that, and that." No, the way prescriptions usually work is your doctor tells you you're getting this dosage, and you're getting this amount. And if you want more, sometimes the doctor has like on your label that you can refill it so many times in a time period. But my point that I'm trying to make, and then I want to get to the comments that are coming in because I see they're flowing in and maybe we got some good wisdom to share, is that this, from what I understand, would not really change much with regard to how we interact with cannabis. It is possible that like research and stuff can be kicked off at a levels that have been impeded before. I will just say, to bring hemp back around, hemp is actually one of the reasons that cannabis research did start. I've interviewed and gone to several higher education institutions within the state of Illinois, but we're not unique in the fact that cannabis programs have been cropping up, pun intended, as a result of the flexibility that hemp has offered. So you can thank hemp for the for research on cannabis kind of restarting, because before then there was only like I think a couple of universities that were allowed to study cannabis. Ole Miss is one that I'm thinking of, and notoriously, maybe we can look up a picture here in a second if you all remind me. Ole Miss was known for growing awful cannabis under the federal research program. So now, because of hemp, several universities have started cannabis research programs under the guise of hemp. And so that's some of the flexibility that comes with being a descheduled substance. So this comment is a really good one that I'm about to display on my screen. It's a point I was about to wrap around to. Schedule 3 will allow big pharma to sell to make more synthetic THC medicines, and in fact, that's what's interesting about that point is that if you look up a drug like Epidiolex, which is CBD oil, I do believe. What schedule is it? Let's see. What schedule is Epidiolex? Epidiolex is actually schedule 4, which is interesting. What is Marinol, which is another cannabis? It's supposed to be. So Marinol is a Schedule 3 drug under the Controlled Substance Act. It's an oral drobenol THC solution. I don't know. From what I understand, Marinol is a trans delta 9. It's tetrahydrocannabinol. It's just straight up THC, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to do some research off the hip here. Google it though, folks. Marinol, it's what the FDA. Drobenol is the principal psychoactive constituent. I'm reading a bunch of science shit here. This is crazy. I'll show it on my screen right now. This is about drobenol, which is sold under the brand names Marinol and Syndrose. It's the generic name for the molecule of trans delta 9 THC in the pharmaceutical context. It has indications as an appetite stimulant, antiemetic, and sleep apnea reliever, and is approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration as safe and effective HIV/AIDS induced anorexia and chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting. So delta 9 THC found in cannabis plants can also be synthesized in a laboratory. Drobenol does not contain. Oh, I was right. Drobenol does not include any other THC isomers or any CBD. So it's just delta 9 THC. And yeah, there are different uses. But anyways, I digress. Other comments that came in. Tom said descheduling makes sense. We should be able to buy weed cigarettes at the gas station, weed drinks at the liquor store, and all weed products at dispensaries. That's a very fair take. I completely agree. And it takes me back to when I had some friends that were from Washington, and Washington and Colorado legalized at the same time. So I think this was in like 2012. Let me just Google that. But anyways, when it legalized in Washington, I asked my friend, so does that mean like tomorrow when you go to the gas station, you're going to be able to buy weed? And of course it didn't mean that, but that it's just kind of funny to think about that. That's the first idea that I thought, okay, it's legal. So does that mean like weed is going to be on the shelf next to cigarettes? And of course we all know that's not really how it's played out. I was correct. December 6th, 2012 is when Washington became the first state to legalize adult use marijuana and the first to allow recreational sales alongside Colorado. So Colorado also did that in 2012. Tom also said, descheduling is a no-brainer. Hemp already made it happen. It's a model for decriminalized, descheduled cannabis. Having it separated by hemp versus Schedule 1 is a disservice to everyone. I agree. So very well said. And I will extend that point to saying that if it's rescheduled to Schedule 3, that is, and I'm sure you agree with me on this, but I just wanted to make it clear for the listening audience, that's also a disservice because I've heard, and again, I'm not a legal expert, so if you are, drop your comments below. Let me know. I'll be sure to correct this. But I've heard from other legal experts online, and I know everybody has an opinion, but their opinion was hemp would be excluded from rescheduling. I've seen some people ask, well, if rescheduling goes through, does that mean the whole hemp thing gets shut down? Does that mean cannabis as a whole plant is Schedule 3 now? Now there is one plant, one set of rules? No, from what I've heard at least, right? And I could be wrong, but the legal opinion that I've seen is that marijuana, in air quotes, would be Schedule 3, but hemp would remain a descheduled commodity as a result of the Farm Bill. And there would still be this kind of bifurcation of cannabis, right? Because we're talking about cannabis, but of course, there's this weird arbitrary distinction we've created between air quote marijuana and air quote hemp. So it's silly, but it's certainly made things interesting. And again, that's why you can get drinks like this shipped right to your door. drinkcantrip.com/Cole Memo if you want a 15% discount on some legal cannabis drinks. Once again, I get kicked 15% so that I can buy some more drinks. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. There was another story that I wanted to cover tonight, but I think we'll save it for another day. I hope you all found value in this episode of the Cole Memo, and just wanted to say once again that I should be live again tomorrow around 4 p.m. I'll also be dropping an episode with somebody who does not believe cannabis should be legal at all. Not a first for this show. So stay tuned for that. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes I've done with people that don't believe cannabis should be legal at all, including a debate that I hosted, you can go to colememo.com/Sam. That's colememo.com/SAM. And there are a number of episodes that you can watch. If you're like me, you love debates, you love conversations with, I love hearing perspectives that I may not disagree, that I may not agree with, I meant to say. So if you go to colememo.com/Sam, I've got 7 freaking episodes for you. And this episode right here, which is featuring Jordan Davidson and Justin Streckel. Justin is from was from the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws, NORML, who you may have heard of. And Jordan is from SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which is not exactly what it sounds like. It's a prohibitionist group that works at a federal and state level to prevent cannabis from becoming legal. And so, on one side, I had a cannabis advocate who was on the ground and trying to make cannabis legal. On the other side, in that episode that I've got highlighted here, I had somebody that doesn't believe it should be legal. And it certainly was a fun conversation to be a part of. And again, if you like things like that, go to colememo.com/Sam to see the episodes that I've put out so far. And stay tuned for the new episode that I'll be dropping with Aubrey Adams from Every Brain Matters. Every brain matters, folks, and we need to protect it from the dangers of marijuana. Okay. I hope you all had a great weekend. I hope you all have a good week ahead of you. I'm sure hoping that I do. And please, if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop your comments if you wanted to correct me on anything, because it's possible that I got some things wrong, or if you just want to add to the conversation. I'm always curious what you all think about what I covered in the show. I just want to say thank you to all of you that stayed tuned in for as long as you have, and have a good Sunday night. And by the way, if you haven't checked out my mini documentary, here's a teaser. Here's what it looks like.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I've represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.